that, we'll get started. I wanted to have this quick bite uh, specifically on costs because uh, I, we participate in RFPs at Page One. We give prices and quotes and bids for projects and managed services all the time. And what we realize when we do it is most of the time people have a really tough time comparing vendors, comparing platforms, and comparing the costs with those vendors or platforms. So that's what we want to help solve for. Um, and we're going to talk about why cost and quote comparisons are so difficult. Um, every vendor prices things differently, uses different pricing models. Oftentimes, line items are bundled or redundant, unclear, or inconsistent. Sometimes they seem just made up, and the descriptors are almost seemingly intentionally confusing. And unfortunately, with line items, it can feel like a shell game to create a lower cost hosting, add a couple line items for user fees or processing. The bottom line is comparing platforms, providers, and partners by price alone leads to an incomplete and oftentimes a costly decision. So to start off, I want to say every vendor is faced with what to charge for and what not to charge for. Just as every client, every law firm, every corporate legal department has to decide what they're willing and not willing to spend to get services or support or access to the platform. It's important for you to know, for the end client to know, and for you to know what is a hard cost. So, for example, Relativity is not charging for processing and ingestion. There is no charge from Relativity for analytics, advanced analytics, TAR, CAL, predictive coding. They are not charging user licenses. They are not charging for promotion and production. So those are not hard costs. If you are being charged for those things, I would hope that it is because the service provider is performing those tasks for you, and that's why they are billing you for it. Um, but if that is the case, there shouldn't also be a tech time, machine time, and PM time charge for that related task. You can either charge processing per gig, or you can charge project management time to have somebody else perform that service for you. If you're doing it yourself, if you're processing the data yourself, there should be neither of those line items, not a processing line item nor a PM time line item. These are things that are important for you to know so that when you're making the assessment between vendors, platforms, or getting a quote or bid for a particular litigation, uh, you are aware of what things you are being expected to pay for that might not line up with the workflow or process you had in mind. Not everything is going to be charged the same way. Some vendors will make a case for why they charge for analytics. Yeah, I can only speak for me. I don't I don't think it's fair to charge for a feature or function of the platform. Um, Relativity is not charging us for it. We probably shouldn't be charging you for it, and therefore, um, it's probably best that you ask questions and say, "Hey, why is there an advanced analytics charge or an analytics charge? What is that? What is that for specifically? What are you doing to warrant that cost?" And most importantly, if you're doing it yourself, self-service, or you're having a member of your team do it, then there really should be no cost at all outside of hosting. Why most cross-platform and multi-vendor comparisons miss the mark? The most common mistakes we see is comparing the totals for hosting instead of looking at the line items in full, looking at the variety of line items, and looking at the long-term costs. It's important to analyze, you're telling me this is what it's going to cost me month one or the first 3 months. What's this going to cost me over the course of 12 months? What's it going to cost my client over the course of 24 months? Um, And a lot of pricing models are created in such a way that it sounds really good up front. Like, hey, we only charge based on the pre-ingested volume. Well, that sounds really good. And they'll say, we don't charge you based on the expanded size of your data. Again, sounds great. But if they're going to charge you that pre-ingested volume indefinitely for, I don't know, 24 months, well, then you can see how without being able to reduce that cost with culling or archiving, um, in the end, there's going to be a tipping point where it starts to no longer be a good deal. So the billing units, one vendor is charging per doc, the other's per gig, the other's per hour, the other's a culmination of all of those things. Those billing units are exceptionally important. And asking the question, why do you charge this per gig instead of per hour? Or could you charge this per hour rather than per gig? Be armed with the knowledge that it's not a hard cost to them. They're doing this as a service. It should be billed hourly, or your preference is for it to be billed hourly. It's your prerogative. Also, it's important to look at the rationale for the cost. Is this the process or workflow you want for your matter? Is every line item that's being proposed in line with how your case strategy is? Those things can make a significant difference. So you got to ask. You not only have to ask, you have to demand. You say, for example, when you have a transactional project, you have a single matter that you want pricing for. My best advice to you is create a hypothetical for an MSA2. Actually, I take it back. No, regardless of whether it's transactional or not, create a hypothetical. John Tucker at King and Spalding has done this for years and years and years, and I think it is the smartest. I want to give credit. It's the smartest way to do it. Creates a case. He describes the amount of data, the type of data, the expectation of how long the matter is going to last, or how many months of quoting he wants. And he creates this hypothetical matter and asks you to create a hypothetical invoice, or propose the pricing based on this hypothetical. Now, even if this is going to apply to an actual matter or a transactional matter, you can always extrapolate and apply the prices from the hypothetical invoice to an expectation for the real invoice. But this is the only way to overcome all of the variables that are just the nature of our business. We don't know what the expanded size is going to be exactly. We don't know how many attachments are in those emails exactly. And we don't know the size of those. We don't know how many GIFs are in the text message. There's too many things that you can't really know until you're already somewhere downfield. And so create some hypotheticals so that you can get a good idea and then extrapolate based on those hypotheticals. And also compare what features or functionality are included and which ones are being charged a la carte. This helps you standardize across any matter and future matters, based on workflow, what the impact will be to the end cost. Some of the most common pitfalls or tricks we see is line items that multiply. Analytics is a really good example of it. I have seen proposals with the processing and hosting and production and promotion and analytics and advanced analytics and senior analytics project manager and junior analytics project manager. And these are, listen, there might be valid reasons for charging for these things, and there might be justifications for these line items, but at the very least, ask, investigate a little bit, because many of these things have no cost, no hard cost, certainly. And if you are running things yourselves and you're self-sufficient and you're doing your own threading or clustering, there really is no reason to have that line item there, or at least off the top of my head. So it's important to ask. I don't want to imply that anybody's ripping anybody off. I just mean ask, because it is odd. The At the end of the day, in order to have an apples to apples comparison, some of the industry will just paint their oranges red, call them apples, and say it's an apples to apples comparison, when in reality, the line items are intentionally or unintentionally incongruent with other vendors' line items. And so the disparity of what they call it, a advanced analytics or data promotion by vendor A, and then vendor B calls it advanced search and filtering. If they're not matching up and you don't know what each line item actually means and what it was used for, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to have an apples to apples comparison. So additional ones, and we'll be sending these to you on in a PDF with all the common issues we see and my recommendations for how to deal with those. But some important things to keep in mind: proprietary tools are great. They're great, but be cautious, because if the proprietary tool of the vendor claims that, hey, if you ever do need relativity, you'll be able to move from our platform to relativity really easy, no problem. But we recommend you start here in our platform and only go to relativity if it's really necessary. And they frame it like that on the front end, but you need to ask them, how is it going to get into relativity? Are you going to export natives and images and give me some enormous thing that I am now going to put into relativity and pay out the nose for? Are you going to create an arm for me? Like, how is that going to happen? Easy is relative. Like, what do you mean it'll be easy to go into another platform? And keep in mind that proprietary platforms are proprietary, so the chances that your co-counsel or another party to the litigation is going to have the same platform knowledge or be able to work collaboratively within it is pretty slim most of the time. Also, you want a pricing model, regardless of whether it's a proprietary platform or a relativity or reveal or one of the larger names. You want a pricing model that incentivizes and rewards the reduction of data. Like, everything that you do to narrow down your data set is reducing cost. You don't want pricing models that are padding and making profits easier or safer for the vendor in the event that your data footprint becomes small. You got to be weary of those types of things. And like I said before, arbitrary fees that don't come from software providers, double dipping through vague or bundled fee language that can be advanced PM and junior PM and senior PM and tech time and machine time and per gig, all for processing the same 50 gigs. So ask questions, make sure you're not being taken advantage of or unintentionally put in a position where you're spending more than you should. Also, and I know we're already running up on time, but self-sufficiency is super important, and self-service is super important, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be just one. You don't have to commit to 100% dependency on a vendor. You don't want to create a toxic codependency on a vendor, but you also don't want to say, hey, I'll never need any help. I can do everything myself. Is it always worth it to do it yourself? No, but it's like, and I put in here, it's like knowing how to change your own oil doesn't mean you're always going to change your own oil. My wife knows how to change our oil. I don't, but my wife knows how to change our oil. I think she's changed our oil one time. She sends me to Jiffy Lube, but like in a pinch, she could do it. So depending on time or budget or whatever, you can use the mechanic or you can do it yourself. A good service partner will train at no cost or very little cost, so that you can be as autonomous and self-sufficient as you want to be. And that self-sufficiency and self-service should mean that there is no cost associated with the work that you're doing yourself. If you're processing your own data, you shouldn't be paying for data processing. So uh, the next steps, things I would like people to take away from this: define costs clearly in an RFP, in an MSA, or transactional work. Standardize your line items, your scope, and your workflow process. The best recommendation for me: create a mock scenario or hypotheticals in order to quote for your project, and then extrapolate and do the math when you have the actual volume and the real numbers. Compare the platform's features, functions, process, and the timeline projections. You don't want to be paying for AI, for example, for 13 months if you're going to be using that AI tool or feature for 30 days. Make sure that you know what's a la carte and what's included, and train intentionally. Have your service provider educate you, especially if there was a workflow or a process or something that they did or used that was really helpful, or it helped get you from A to B more quickly or efficiently. Ask to be taught, trained. Ask them to train your teams, train your departments. It is important that the only source of uh, successful workflows is not your service provider. Um, we have created a cost comparison tool. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's really nice. I'm actually, I'll send it to everybody. But you put in vendor A's pricing, vendor B's pricing, or software A's pricing, software B's pricing. You're going to put in hypothetical number of hours you expect in a forensic collection, hypothetical number of gigs, all, all of that stuff. I mean, we have made it super specific and super precise, and it'll give you uh, a projected cost for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And it's really interesting when you fill this thing out, how like the most cost effective in month one tends to not be the most cost effective overall. Not every time, but like in the times I have put the numbers in, and it's interesting to see where that happens. So make sure you keep in mind, this is a collaborative process. You should be talking to your vendor most specifically about why and what they're charging for and what they envision the need for those line items are. Uh, Again, we'll send out the cost calculator, but I'm super passionate about this topic as well as cost recovery and client bill back. I'm happy to talk to you anytime and just hash through what you've seen, what you hope to see, what's been hard, and what's been great. And if anybody has any questions and wants to hang back and chat, I'm happy to talk now too. Uh, I hope some of this was informative. I know that the Excel spreadsheet we're going to send to you will be useful. I hope you'll save it. And if you need help filling it out, or you want to ask any questions, feel free.